Welcome to part 3 and the final part of the Sea Tempest. What I've done here is you can see I've applied some white and I've already started masking some of the markings. Very complicated masking job this actually. Complicated markings based on Sea Furies in the Korean War. So these are the Korean War stripes. There's a gap underneath where the serial went, and a gap in the stripes on the fuselage for where the individual aircraft letter went. Right, strips of masking tape cut on my Silhouette Portrait 3 to the correct width. I just used a bit of seaman eye for the measurements. And then what I'll do is put the initial inboard white stripe on, then the next black one as a spacer. The next white stripe can go down, and then I can remove the black stripe and just work my way along. Fuselage was a little bit more complicated because obviously it's round, and it took a little bit of touching up actually, the fuselage one. I'm not clever enough to do all the curves and everything. There we go, just removing that black stripe, and then we can use that for the next black stripe. Patience is the key here. Careful measurement, and don't be afraid if it's not working. Start again. You could always paint the camouflage first and then do the white stripes over the top, but I do find that painting the white first actually is much preferable. Now you can see there I started painting the roundels. Yeah, bit of an epic fail, as you'll see later on. Just going in there with the scalpel just along the ailerons. It's quite a deep line there. Just make sure that there's no sort of overspray creeping in underneath. There we are, first wing done. And there is the whole aeroplane done. Ready for the next stage. And the next stage is the sky. This is MRP. In fact, pretty much all the paints on this model were MRP, provided by Premium Hobbies. Actually, they're really good stockists and highly recommended. A bit of a channel sponsor, and some of the paints in this model were provided by them. So thanks to Ed for sponsoring the channel. But initially, just a solid opaque coat goes down, and then I can tint the sky just with a bit of white actually, and just going along the some of the panel lines, picking out some of the panels, a little bit of a cloudy effect. I don't like the splatter masks. I don't think it looks terribly realistic. I prefer a more sort of organic look. And just a general fade. I tend to exaggerate it a little bit because all the other weathering is going to blend everything down. Right, I did mention that there was going to be some masking on this project, and the fuselage demarcation is actually quite tricky. But once done, we can go in with the extra dark sea grey again, MRP, and again kindly provided by Premium Hobbies. So initially just an opaque coat goes down, and then we'll tint that like we did the sky a little bit later. Taking no chances with overspray. Obviously it doesn't matter if I get any on the stripes that are going to be black. And this MRP, it is my favourite paint, certainly for 72nd and 48 scale subjects. Goes down really well, nice and opaque, pre-thinned very hard eggshell type finish at the end. Well, actually, I'd say probably semi-gloss. Quite therapeutic, actually. I found doing this this part once all the once all the masking was done. It's one of those things, isn't it? You know, you can spend hours making a really nice meal and then 50 minutes of chowing and it's all gone. This is about the same, really. Ages masking and then a quick 5-minute spray job. And there we go, just going in with the fading. You can see I'm not fading the center of panels. I prefer to do it the other way. If you fade along the panel lines, it's almost simulating that the light is being caught on the edge of the panels. And I think it's much more pleasing on the eye. But a lot of that is going to get blended away, really. Now for the low lights, just going along the wing fold there. My thoughts being maybe some hydraulic fluid or oil, grease staining the paintwork. But not just confined to that wing fold panel line, just doing other bits and pieces. I think there might be wing fuel tanks there. They're getting some random sort of splotches and blodges and whatnot. Now, this is satisfying. It's removing the masking. Also, a little bit nerve-wracking as well. Just touch-ups normally are inevitable, but I kind of got away with it with this one. I was really pleased. I mean, trying to match those curves on the tail there is a little bit awkward, as he's trying to get the edge of the tape. This is the Flexi vinyl tape from Ammo. Really good stuff, actually, for doing tight curves like that around the leading edge of the fairing. And I was really pleased with how that came out, actually. Really pleased. Spraying some of the markings now. I had a Montex set, an old one, in the stash, ready for an Airfix Sea Fury. So I thought I'd get them out and use the roundels, use some of the markings. This is MRP black. Just with a few drops of tyre black in there, just to knock the kind of stark black away, and just reusing some of the tape, cost-effective way there. I don't like waste if I can help it. Probably not even needed, but you know, belt and braces. Especially as this is the first time using my new Infinity 2024 airbrush from Harder & Steenbeck. Absolutely love it. Right, more trepidation as more masking comes off, but actually these theatre markings work really well, and just pulling off the blank there where the serial is going to go. Slight mismatch in the colour, but actually that's all going to get weathered in. I think this is HMS Glory, is the R. And yeah, not using any transfer tape, just doing it by eye, getting the centre of the zero there. And then we'll mask that off and spray that in the same way. So mask is in place for the underwing serials. Just got to make sure you get them the right way around because they are handed. That same black mix. Just using the edge of a scalpel blade here just to pick out the middle bit and being very careful not to scratch the paint. It's very easy to do that. Now when pulling the masks off, sometimes they tear. So again, you're just going in, being very careful not to scratch anything, and job done. Really pleased with how that turned out. Right, inevitable that there needs to be a few touch-ups, and especially on the fuselage stripes here. A little bit of a wobble. You can see the black there just protruding over the white. This happened in a few areas. Just testing the flow on the nail. But it's an easy job just to go in and touch that up. Spraying white over the black can be a little bit awkward sometimes, but not with this MRP. It's very dense pigment. Covers really well. And it's a really quick job, actually, just to fix some of the errors. And that looks much better. Right, the roundels. Yeah, I think I must have warped them somehow because that looks awful, doesn't it? Just not very circular at all. So I just went in and I used some decals. Decals from Barracuda. And they work brilliantly. I mean, look how that is settled in to the paintwork. Absolutely brilliant. I just wish I used the decals for the whole thing now. They were amazing. Cartograph. Right, napalm tank. That gets an undercoat of any metallic colour will do, actually. But this happens to be duralumin from a stand of ammo. Then it gets a varnish coat just to protect it and just to make it a little bit satin, and then hairspray before the top colour can go down. This sort of orangey yellow colour. And then we can go in with a cocktail stick and some brushes, a little bit of water, and just start chipping away. You can see I wanted a really battered and bashed napalm tank. Inspiration from some of the Mustangs actually ashore, and this was the story that this thing was flying shuttle missions, launched from the carrier with rockets, maybe bombs, conducted a strike, landed ashore for rearm, refuel, spot a lunch or breakfast or something, and then another strike, and then landing back. These are the kit rockets. I abandoned trying to use the brassing ones because I just found the brackets way too fiddly. And the easiest way of doing the white nose was these Posca paint pens. I've had these for quite a while, and they worked an absolute treat. Onto the propeller, and I wanted a fairly beaten up propeller actually, so base coat was done, and then just using diluted acrylic paint, in this case Atom, it's just put on, and then just dab with the sponge just to break things up a bit. Going with various colours. This is obviously the neat black, as it were. You can see wetting the surface and then getting some of the paint and then just sort of wet blending it in. Not going all the way, because I'll come back in with the sponge and just dab that, and it gives a really nice sort of battered effect, as you can see. And then just going in with some paint chips, just applied with a sponge. Not only do I just sort of chip the leading and trailing edges, but also you can sort of swipe it across almost like a dry brush to get some sort of airflow scratch type effects. Now for the oils, and I just mixed up this tone from various ammo oil brushes and just liberally spread this around all over the light areas. I'm avoiding the white here, but I will go back over and actually do this over the white. Just working it into the surface. It's not too thin, it's obviously definitely not a pin wash, because you do want it to sort of grip onto the surface somewhat. Shiny surface, and haven't used any varnishes. And then a darker tone, this is the tone I'm actually going to use on the top side, but I tend to do it around the grubby areas of the engine where you're going to get the oil and grease build up as well. And then carefully avoiding the light areas because we don't want too much contrast. I'm just going to work that in, and then when it's all dry I'm going to polish it off with kitchen towel. You'll see in just a minute. But you know, I try and mix tones that's complementary to the colours underneath, and I don't want, like I say, I don't want too much contrast. And here we are. It's all dry now. Leave it for a few hours. You can hit it with a hairdryer as well. I quite often do that. And then all we do is just polish the surface. I don't try and push too hard, because what I don't want to do is wipe the colour, wipe the paint out of the detail. But you can see it gives a really nice sort of fairly subtle effect. And then we could just go in with some cotton buds, just tidy up, get in the nooks and crannies as well. And then eventually we'll seal that all in with a VMS satin varnish. Onto the wheel wells. Now this was a pin wash, so I used the same tones really, and then just diluted a little bit further and just cleaned up the excess with a cotton bud. Right, oil brusher, Starship Filth. Very, very ubiquitous colour tone, pretty much goes with everything, pretty much. And then just with this very small brush and just taking some of that neat oil paint from the pot, as it were, I'm just going to start applying it. It's relatively dry at the minute. I'm just working it in over the satin base, so it is going to grip somewhat, which is exactly what we want. And then using the same brush and a little bit of thinner, just a tiny amount, and we can start blending. Doing a tapping motion, as you can see. I'm not wiping, I want to blend it. And the tapping motion is key. And just experiment. Just experiment with the amount of thinner, the amount of paint, and a little bit of practice, and you can get this really nice grimy effect. Now the disadvantage of using oils for this is if you're going to do any streaking effects over the top, you're either going to have to wait a long time for the oils to dry, at least 24 hours, or seal it in with a varnish coat even after it's dry, and that's what I tend to do if I'm going to do any sort of streaking effects. Not too much streaking on this one though. You can see I've done a little bit there whilst I've been blending. And just going in, adding a bit more, taking it away. Ooh, I've taken away too much. Let's add a bit more. So just going backwards and forwards and playing with it really. Such a shame it's all hidden on the underside. One of the reasons why I don't tend to add loads of wires and things into gear bays. This is where the wing fold is, and just dirtying that up, sort of grease and oil seeping out, dirt and grime is going to stick to it. That's kind of my thought processes. A little bit of streaking there, just going back, quite subtle as you can see. And then I'll just clean up ahead of the panel line so it's got an origin, if you like. Looking at some gun ports on period photos of Sea Furies and things, yeah, they got absolutely minging with gun smoke. And then just taking that brush and just dry brushing the oil paint back for a very subtle gun smoke streak. Really subtle, much easier than spraying, I thought, doing this. And if you overdo it or it's a bit crooked, you can just go remove it with a bit of thinner and then have another go. Some streaking as well coming out of there, maybe flying through a rainstorm. And you know, having fired we only had 120mm cannon on the Tornado, but just a couple of sorties firing that, and it made a right mess. All dot fading now. Again, another technique I've been using for a very long time. Just note the tones though. White, Starship Filth, obviously. Black, blue for this extra dot, sea grey. And then again, dark tone along that wing fold line. And we can just slightly blend that in. Wet blending first, and then when it's dry, just going in with a dry brush for a final blend. And you can see the difference in the wings there and the sort of fading and the grime effects. Not forgetting the back end. Again, Starship Filth. Same technique as doing the sort of centre of the fuselage bit, but I didn't want it as grimy. But I did round the nose. Shows up really nicely, that Starship Filth against the sky. Perfect. These are the brass-in undercarriage legs. Painted and weathered the same way. Exhaust stain, quite subtle on this one. I didn't want it too stark. My rule of thumb is follow the contour of the wing, and that way it will look natural. Splattering, this is always good fun, and just taking a diluted oil paint, you can mix in some pigment in that as well. Practice on some paper or something first, and then you can just flick it on. You can see I've done some oil streaking over the top there, some oily tones as well, and not forgetting the top, concentrating around the nose, around the refueling points, and then we can just blend that in with a dry brush. Getting close to the end now. Undercarriage, so these are the brass in undercarriage legs. The top's been cut off and filed down because they were a little bit too tight, actually, the fit. Maybe because I got some paint in where I shouldn't have done, but they fit really well, and that's going to be nice and sturdy. Quite complicated retraction system. Just using the plastic kit bits there. They're the brass-in wheel. Sorry, they're not brass-in wheels. They're Barracuda wheels. Here's the rockets all painted up, and I've drilled out the back end, inserted a little bit of copper wire, and then a little bit of brass tube stuck on the end for the plugs. And then we can just carefully go in with a bit of black acrylic paint and just pick those out. The decals actually were from the Brassin set. Napalm tank, that's had a matte varnish as you saw earlier, and then a filter over the top using the Starship filth, and then that can get glued on. I made that up, sticking it under the centre line because I wanted all 8 rockets, and it wouldn't fit on the wing. Talking of fitting on the wing, here you go, the rockets, just using the that Tamiya glue stuff. Really important to make sure they all line up. You don't want a wonky one, because the eye's going to catch that straight away if it's a bit wonky. So just take your time, make sure it all lines up. And then what we can do is bend down the sort of pigtail things. Now these would have been dangling down with gravity. So initially I just bend them all individually, and then using the handle of the tweezers, and then I'll get down just out of shot there. I'm making sure that they are actually vertical. Master Barrels P2. This is for the Tempest Mark II, so I thought I'd use that. Canopy goes on using the Ultra Glue from Ambo by Mig. You can stick that on. This stuff's awesome. 0.1mm nickel silver rod. Absolutely brilliant for things like whip aerials. The penultimate job, sticking on the prop. I have measured it. A Sea Fury prop is exactly the same diameter, so you could use that if you wish. I wish I had brought my Airfix one from the Sea Fury kit. And talking of the Sea Fury kit, the last thing to go on is the tail hook. That puts the sea in Sea Tempest. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, bye-bye.